All right, everyone. So last week I got my rest of season ranking segments here on the channel kicked off with my top 24 running backs for the rest of the way here in 2021. I'm going to be doing a little bit of an alternating schedule by week here going forward. So in week 6, we started this series with the running backs. So now here in week 7, the odd weeks going forward the rest of the season, I will be updating my rest of season wide receiver rankings. So if you follow that schedule moving forward, next week, the next even week coming up here in week 8, I'll be doing those running backs again, tweaking those and updating those a little bit. I didn't want to be too overbearing and post each video every single week because the changes would be very minuscule unless we had some sort of big injury. So today we're going to be doing the wide receiver episode for the first time here and jumping into my top 24 players the rest of the way for the 2021 season. But before we hop into today's video and get talking rankings and we get into our top overall wide receiver for the rest of this fantasy season, we're going to take a quick second to talk about our good friends over at OddsJam and how you can potentially become a more profitable sports bettor this NFL season through some of their great tools and resources on their website. OddsJam compares real-time odds from over 35 top sports books and uses mathematical line discrepancies to help you find extra avenues to profit in your sports betting games. One of OddsJam's best features is that they outline the most profitable sports books for every dollar that you put into an individual game. So here we'll just take a look at the money line between the Cleveland Browns and Denver Broncos on Thursday Night Football. The sports books outlined in yellow correspond with each team that are in the horizontal row that you're seeing them in. Those are the scenarios that have the best return and the best value for you if you plan on betting on these games, so make sure to head the direction of those sports books if you're going to be playing this Thursday. My favorite feature on OddsJam is the arbitrage betting section, where they have found mathematical line discrepancies between two different sports books for one individual sporting contest. You'll see some examples up on the screen, but what's going to happen is that they are going to give you a set, or sometimes like you see in that top example with the Seahawks and New Orleans Saints, it might just be one sportsbook on each side of a betting situation. But if you were to place an even bet on each side of that game on those two differing sportsbooks, one of your bets is going to win, the other one's going to lose, but the profit you get from that winning bet is going to give you a return on the total investment you put into that game to begin with. All right, you guys, go check out OddsJam. You can sign up for your free account today by using the link in the description of today's episode. And I've also linked their Twitter account as well. They're a great partner of the SFS channel here, and they can help you win some money and put some more cash in your pocket this NFL season with those awesome features they have on their site. So we're going to go in reverse order of the running backs. So the running back segment, we go in descending order. We start at 24 and make our way down to the number 1 overall player. We just like to do it different in that episode. Don't ask why. Here for the wide receivers, we're going to do things the more traditional way. We're going to start at the top and make our way down to the bottom of the list, so you'll get your top end names here early. And Davante Adams is the top player at the wide receiver position for me at this current moment in time. Davante leads the league right now. It's very simple. He is the most utilized player in his individual offense with the Green Bay Packers. They are so reliant on his production to move the football downfield and splash plays. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams have an excellent chemistry, and at times they'll even be criticized because they are too dependent on one another, but that results in a lot of footballs being thrown to Davante Adams. He leads the league in receiving yards right now and receptions. He is getting targeted at an unreal clip right now. That's going to continue to be the trend the rest of this season. There's no other significant threat to Davante Adams' target share in this Green Bay Packers offense. As long as he's healthy, he's going to go out there, put up huge numbers. He's had a 200-yard receiving game already this season, and his touchdown count isn't even quite up to the standard that it has been in years past. So Davante Adams, the sky is the limit for him. This is the best wide receiver to have in your fantasy lineups this season. Tyreek Hill at the number 2 spot. The one thing that keeps him lower than Davante Adams is consistency, and the fact that, I guess this is two things, that Travis Kelce eats up such a dominant role in this offense as well. Whereas Davante Adams has that throne and that top-end value to himself in the Green Bay offense, you've got Tyreek Hill competing with Travis Kelce for opportunities on a week-to-week basis. Now, I will say this, Tyreek Hill probably has the highest ceiling of any player in fantasy football, but his floor isn't quite as consistent or as safe as Davante Adams is. Tyreek can go out here and almost win you a game by himself. He's had point productions and half PPR scoring of 30.5 and 41.5 points already this year, where he was just under 200 yards receiving. So his ceiling is astronomical. You almost can't find a player who can score you this many points in any other situation. I mean, even Derrick Henry at the running back position is going out here and having 130 plus yards and 3 touchdowns, and he's still not cracking quite the point totals that Tyreek Hill is in PPR formats because of how dominant he can be. But again, the ceiling is a little bit, or excuse me, not the ceiling. That is not an issue. The floor at times has been a little shaky this year. Pat Mahomes and that offense are obviously always a threat to score huge numbers, though, so it's not like I have any real concerns about Tyreek Hill's value the rest of this season. Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver 3 for me. He's been so consistent. His average right now is 21.3 fantasy points per game in half PPR scoring. And an astounding stat that I stumbled across here is Cooper Kupp has not dipped below a 10-target game this season. He is 6 for 6. That's his floor right now. He has not seen under 10 targets in a given contest this year. That is fantasy football heaven right there. That's a dream opportunity and situation. That's going to give him a fantastic fantasy floor. And even when he's not coming out here and scoring 29, 30 points like we've seen him do, he's still going to get you 10, 12, 14, 15 points in half PPR or PPR leagues because of how often the football is heading his way. He's finding the end zone right now. His route running is fantastic. Him and Matt Stafford have an awesome connection. Cooper Kupp is one of the safest lineup options the rest of the way this season. Justin Jefferson is my wide receiver for the rest of the way here. This is a player I might be a little bit higher on than the consensus right now. I love the target share and the volume he's seeing in this Minnesota Vikings offense. And I think that based off of what we saw from him stretching the field and doing run after catch work in his rookie season, he still has an opportunity to tap into that phase of his game the rest of the way this year. He hasn't quite done that yet. His average is significantly lower than the top 3 players in this list. And mind you, that's probably a tier 1A class above the rest of the players here. But Jefferson's only averaging 14.8. So while his floor has been great, his target floor has been about 7. He hasn't dipped below that marker yet this season. I see a lot of room for growth for him, as I do a lot of other players in this 4 to 10 range on the rankings list. But Justin Jefferson's a player I'm very confident in going forward this season. Someone who's had to drop off a little bit for me, DeAndre Hopkins of the Arizona Cardinals. This one stinks, but man, D-Hop is not seeing an impressive target share right now, and that is concerning. He is far too touchdown dependent for my liking. He had 4 targets last week and scored 2 touchdowns. He's an alien, a freak of nature. When you get the football in his hands, he's one of the most purely talented wide receivers in the game. But we need more targets. He's averaging 6 1/3 targets per game right now, which is significantly lower than the other top fantasy performers right now. If he didn't have 6 TDs on the season, I'd be feeling a lot worse about his production right now. Even last week, I mean, without those touchdowns scored, you're looking at pretty average and modest numbers. He doesn't have a single 10-target game this year. Hasn't cracked double-digit passes headed his way in one contest. It seems like a dream scenario on paper. With Kyler Murray, you think he's going to get peppered in targets, be used like he was last year when he was a 1,400-yard receiver and only had 6 touchdowns, I believe it was, on the entire season. Now we're in week 7 here. He's already past that marker, but the yards and targets are way down. So if that touchdown production dips the rest of the way, we could be scratching our heads wondering what happened to DeAndre Hopkins' fantasy value. Stephon Diggs. This is one where I've been bullish on Diggs all season. He was due for a big game. He went out there and produced against the Tennessee Titans, but I'm not ready to bestow 100% of my trust in him just after one strong performance. I want to see more consistency. That's what's been lacking here for Diggs. The talent is there. The field stretching ability is there. He's clearly capable of being a top 3 fantasy scoring wide receiver like he was last season, but Josh Allen's development and progression to spreading the ball out more on the field has really lessened his ceiling on a week-to-week basis, and even his target share at times. He's still cracked the 10-target marker in 4 of his 6 games, but that's something still that the productivity hasn't always been there. Now they've been just off on some deep balls, some home run shots downfield. They've just missed or had some penalties, call plays back, but Diggs is still a player I'm confident in, and I'm reflecting that with my top 6 ranking right now. Mike Williams, still a player who I think the verdict is out on, but a player I feel strongly enough in his ceiling to keep him in the top 10 of the rankings list for now. Mike Williams is scoring touchdowns at a freakish clip. He's got 6 TDs in his first 6 games heading into the bye week here, so he's probably going to drop down in terms of his overall point outage and ranking right now. But in terms of like in your apps, I'm talking, not in terms of this video, of course. But the issue for me with Mike Williams is it's been all or nothing this season. He's either getting you a ridiculous amount of yards and a couple, maybe 1 to 2 touchdowns scored in a game, or he's coming out here and quite literally in half PPR scoring 3 to 3.5 points. That ain't cutting it. Obviously, you want a lot better production out of a player who is coming out here and looking like the part of a wide receiver one. He's got the build to be a freakish red zone target. He's been stretching the field and making deep balls happen. We just need to know, or at least see, that the booming is going to happen more frequently than the bust games are happening here. And if that consistency can get a little bit more to the point of, he's going to have down games. We know that. Every fantasy player will. But can those down games be 7 or 8 points instead of 3? That's something that would make us feel a lot better with him going forward, because right now it feels like you're either getting 20 plus or under 5, and that's something that can be a little bit risky for lineups here, but still the ceiling is unprecedented at this point. DJ Moore, a player I'm sticking high with here at the number 8 spot for this week, this rankings episode, that is at least. He's getting peppered in targets. He's getting force-fed the ball, and Sam Darnold is locking into him and laser-focused on throwing this man the football. He hasn't been overly productive the last 2 weeks, having back-to-back down performances, but he is being targeted at such a high clip, it's hard for me to look the other direction. He's got 62 targets on the year, so at over 10 targets per game over the stretch of the season. That's a gold mine. He doesn't excel in the red zone. He's not a big-bodied wide receiver that's going to go dominate in that area of the field, but he's skilled enough to score from outside the red zone. He's skilled enough to win contested grabs downfield, do tremendous things, run after catch. In PPR leagues, this guy is a phenom. Stay patient. DJ Moore will come around here. It's just a matter of time before him and Sam Darnold get back on the same page. And while Sam might be a little bit reckless, it does help fantasy owners that he is locking in on DJ Moore and throwing him so many passes on a per-game basis. CeeDee Lamb at the number 9 spot here. There's a strong element of boom or bust for wide receivers in this Cowboys offense. He hadn't been targeted double-digit times since the first game of the season against Tampa Bay, where he went nuts as well. Comes out against New England, scores the game-winning touchdown, nearly 30 points in half PPR scoring. He's fantastically talented. He's a wide receiver 1 in this league. He's a dominant player. The ceiling is awesome, just like, again, a lot of these players have such awesome ceilings. But the one thing we're lacking right now is that consistent floor, because the Cowboys do want to run the ball when they have the chance. When they're able to have a balanced attack, that's when this football team is at their best. So they're going to stay that way when they have the opportunity to. But when they have to drop back and pass, sling the rock around the yard, CeeDee Lamb is certainly an awesome option to have in your fantasy lineups. At number 10, I've got the rookie Jamar Chase. Higher than I expected to have him at this point in the season, to be honest. But, man, the chemistry with him and Joe Burrow has been even more elite and even more dominant than I expected it to be this early on in the year. Their deep ball playmaking skills together has been so unstoppable this year. No one's been able to stop it. Jamar Chase, despite the fact that he's not going out here and grabbing 7, 8, 9, 10 balls a game, is getting the job done with 3 or 4 catches at times, because he's catching a 50-yarder almost every contest, whether it's his signature fade route, running a post pattern, a deep dig route. He gets the job done. He finds the end zone. Him and Joe Burrow are just on the same page. It's an awesome thing to watch. He's going to be a dominant receiver in this league for years to come. And honestly, at a point, the chemistry with Joe Burrow is so unbreakable that it makes me confident that this can continue for the rest of the season. Without question, he's going to have a down week at some point. He is going to not live up to expectations in some fashion sooner rather than later. But for a rookie to be a 6-for-6 hit to start the season off in terms of meeting his floor expectations, you can't really ask more of a pick who was a middle round selection for you on draft day. Calvin Ridley at my number 11 spot. Hasn't tapped into the ceiling yet, but dang, has the floor been good. Didn't travel with the team to London before the bye, but he has returned now. He's the wide receiver 4 last year, so obviously some regression has been in store for him this season. But if he can get back to scoring touchdowns, if Matt Ryan can connect with him on big plays over the top, Cordero Patterson has been a blessing in disguise for this offense, really opening things up, really helping them get back to a more dynamic attack for this entire offense as a whole, and spreading out the defensive attention across the board. That should help Calvin Ridley start to assert himself later on in the year, and hopefully he can trend back to those high upside numbers. Deebo Samuel. The ceiling is unquestionably great. He has produced some of the best games in fantasy at this point in the season, and even coming off the bye week, He's still number 5 overall in the receiving yardage department for all wide receivers right now, or I guess all pass catchers. That's very impressive, but I want to see a bigger sample size. I'm not quite ready to put Deebo Samuel in that top 10 class of wide receivers, while some people out there might be, because I'll be honest, when I'm watching the productivity that Deebo Samuel is having, we're not seeing George Kittle be involved in this offense as much as he has been in the past in his most productive seasons. He's injured right now. He's not available. The involvement and the overall usage for Samuel could change slightly once Kittle's healthy and returns back to the field. Brandon Ayuk has not been involved nearly to the same extent that he was last season. It was kind of the roles were reversed. Deebo came into the year not so much 100%, gets banged up, nicked up, misses some time. Ayuk takes over the offense, and we're off to the races with him. Now it's the other way around. Deebo Samuel is that player this year. When I watch Deebo's biggest plays, they're blatantly blown coverages. I love Deebo Samuel's talent as a player. He's an awesome playmaker. I've said this before. When they get him out in space and he runs so physically on those jet sweeps and gets out there on those wide receiver run plays, he reminds me almost of a Le'Veon Bell-esque wide receiver in terms of how physical he runs, how elusive he is, how his patience is. He looks like he could be a running back that also runs exceptional routes. He's an awesome, awesome player. But I haven't seen him do savvy technical things downfield on a consistent basis to help him win these routes. He's just streaming across the middle of the field, wide open, catches the ball, no one in sight, and he's got burners, so then he takes off and scores a touchdown. Not saying the kid can't do it, but I want to see him do it on a more consistent basis, or continue to do it on a consistent basis, I should say, because he is doing it consistently right now. I just want to see more before I move him up here. I'm happy to do it, but I'm going to be a little bit more hesitant here before just ascending him into that 7, 6, 7, 8 range of the rankings list. Terry McLaurin, super boom bust. That's why he's lower on the list right now. The things that this kid can do from a route running perspective, stretching the field, winning contested catches, it's exceptional. The one thing holding him back is quarterback play, being on the same page, and just being in the right spot at the right time. Washington's offense has not been good this year. Washington as a team has been a total flop this year. It's really out of his control at this point. He just needs either Taylor Heineke to step it up and play better, or he needs Fitzmagic to come back and hope to reassert these numbers we've seen from Terry McLaurin in the past, where he was seemingly quarterback-proof at a point in his career. Now, there are games when Terry McLaurin is on fire, and he goes absolutely nuts on defenses. But there's also games where he's very, very quiet, despite the fact that he's seen 19 targets over his last 2 games. So something is a little bit off here. Maybe it'll take a bye week to get this team really together and get them on the same page from a chemistry perspective. But we're just missing one small tick that I think can be the difference between Terry being a boom or bust high upside wide receiver 2 and reasserting himself back into the established firm wide receiver 1 role, because he has the talent and the potential to do that. This is a really awesome kid, really awesome player. DK Metcalf, absolutely nothing to do with his talent, but he's down here at number 14. Didn't love that he got into a little bit of a bickering match with one of my favorite players, Shannon Sharp, of all time. Loved to listen to him talk sports. Loved watching him as a player, or at least looking back, because he's before my time. But DK Metcalf is awesome. Super physical beast. He can run downfield, score in the red zone. He's got 5 TDs this year, which is amongst the top in the league in the receiving touchdown department. It just kind of sucks, and it's out of your control when you have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and especially a deep ball passer that can pinpoint it and drop it in on a dime in the breadbasket for huge plays. He gets injured and you're left with Geno Smith. Now, props to Geno Smith for trying to run this offense, for being impressive and having a 97-yard touchdown drive the Thursday night that he was thrown into action there. But going forward, that's not going to be the same. Pittsburgh was a very exploitable matchup for Smith. DK Metcalf's numbers should have been better. It was the first start. I'll give him some grace, give him some slack, but the road is not getting any easier here. The Saints coming up this week, the schedule the rest of the way. We don't really know truly how long Russ is going to be out. Now, he's reportedly way ahead of schedule on his recovery, but we'll see if that actually translates into him getting back to the field that much earlier. So he is on the IR right now. I believe he was put on the IR. That's going to make him miss at least 3 games. With that, you're talking about a significant amount of time missed with a starting quarterback or an elite level quarterback for Metcalf. So Once DK can get Russ back under center, he will vault up this rankings list as he's one of the most talented and physically gifted wide receivers in the game, separates at a great level. Have the most confidence in him, but not as quarterback right now. Diontae Johnson is an example of a player who has a much different style than DK Metcalf, and I don't love his quarterback situation either, but he thrives in the situation he's been placed into with the Pittsburgh offense. Short yardage, dink and dunk passes in PPR leagues. He gets so much volume, so many targets. The floor is so safe. He catches a ridiculous amount of passes per game, or at least has the target share in this offense that's super, super high. Juju Smith-Schuster in the back seat now, injured, out for the season. It's the Diontae Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Najee Harris show. These three guys come out here and are basically the entire Pittsburgh passing offense. Not to mention, I haven't even done Diontae Johnson the credit of speaking to his deep ball passing ability, or his deep ball separation ability, rather. He can get out there, play with the best of them, run elite routes, and separate. He has taken a jump in each of his first 3 seasons in the NFL. He's a fantastic player. Absolutely somebody you want on your fantasy teams. If you can go out and trade for him right now while he's still... His production speaks for itself, but his name in terms of being a household player that everybody talks about is still kind of on the down low. Diontae Johnson could have a league-winning floor this year, and that's something really weird to talk about because you can genuinely expect him to score 10 or more points every single week unless he ends up tweaking a hamstring or something, which has been an issue in the past with him just getting nicked up in games. But dang, when he's out there, he's one of the best wide receivers in the league right now. Not the most physically gifted or raw athletic player, but a very savvy, very skilled player who is going to do really, really good things for this Pittsburgh offense for quite a while. Keenan Allen has been underwhelming this year. He's been disappointing for fantasy purposes. The third-round pick in a lot of leagues has not really tapped into any sort of ceiling value so far this season. The target share is there, though. The talent is there. The separation ability. The Chargers offense with Justin Herbert under center. You've got a lot to work with. You've got Mike Williams on the other side, diluting attention from Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler in the backfield. There's too many pieces I like to expect Keenan Allen to continue to struggle this year. As long as this guy stays healthy, as long as he continues to be thrown as many passes as he has been so far this season, I'm a Keenan Allen believer. At the very least, he should be a dependable floor play week in and week out the rest of the way. A.J. Brown rises himself up the rankings list here. It's looking more and more like every other week we're going to get A.J. Brown in this Titans offense to himself because Julio Jones just can't stay healthy, man. His hamstring acts up every other freaking week. The last 3 years, I feel like it's been a hamstring battle constantly with Julio, and you just can't depend on the guy. A.J. Brown came out here against a very tough Bills matchup where Tre'Davious White's moving around on the field and giving him a healthy amount of attention. Brown's sick, coming off of some food poisoning. I forget the restaurant that he blamed for having the upset stomach and keeping him up all night, but he kind of looked like he was running a little slow out there, a little sluggish. He didn't look like he was quite up to himself. Still went out, caught 7 of 9 passes, 91 yards, so nearly cracked the 100-yard marker, despite clearly not looking his best. Just like DK Metcalf. He's a physically imposing player, one of the best after the catch in the National Football League, just a dominant athlete out in space. I believe in this kid. It's been a rocky road so far this season, but the matchups going forward, the in-division play, I believe in him in those contests. I think he can step up to the plate here and make up for lost time and be a very productive wide receiver down the stretch of this season. Mike Evans, my top Tampa Bay wide receiver for the rest of the year as it currently stands. He's seen an increase in targets from 2020. That's very encouraging to me because that was one of the things that made me not like him so much last year was the fact that he only had an 18% target share of the Tampa offense, and he was so touchdown dependent. But he's found ways to not only continue scoring touchdowns, but add yardage in other avenues on top of that to increase his productivity and give him a little bit of a safer floor. Now, he does have 2 games that are really, really underwhelming on the schedule already this year, but still, he's an established and firm wide receiver 2 in lineups and someone you can at least count on just about every other week to find the end zone and score. Amari Cooper, same type of deal here as a Mike Evans. There's an element of a boom-bust feel that you're starting to feel with every single one of these options. I'll get into the specifics of each of them, obviously, But Amari, it comes down to that run game. How much is Dak going to throw the ball on a per-game basis? I feel like with Amari Cooper, I'm either expecting 5 points or 20. And I'm never really quite sure which one I'm going to get. But he's either going to go out there. He's super talented, don't get me wrong. One of the best route runners, super explosive after the catch. It's hard to catch him when he gets out there in space. But he either barely sees the football come his way and has a really, really quiet game, or he comes out here and just goes nuts, scores a touchdown, hits a long ball, and makes an explosive play. And there's no real in-between. Like, he doesn't have a steady floor. It's, like I said, boom or bust, hit or miss, one way or the other. That's what to expect with Amari Cooper. So not my favorite player to stay on the rest of the season because I think that there's a lot of safer options. For example, you can take an Amari Cooper, flip him, get yourself a Diontae Johnson, ding, 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 go for that every single time. Antonio Brown, my number 20 wide receiver, ahead of Chris Godwin. So that's probably a surprise for a lot of people out here. But an interesting stat, since arriving in Tampa Bay and suiting up for the Buccaneers, no other player on this roster has seen as many passes as Antonio Brown has in that span of time. That's noteworthy. Tom Brady has established him as his, I don't want to say he's his favorite target or his most trusted, but that's what the numbers tell you. So they're great friends off the field. Somehow that chemistry, that connection has translated and correlated into production on the field. AB looks like he's got some extra juice. He's got an extra step of quickness in his game this year that he didn't have last year and we didn't see. He looked a little bit slower. He looked a half step not as good as he was before he left, or at least froze his feet off with the Raiders. If you know what I'm talking about here in the Hard Knocks episode where he injured himself in the cold bath or something, and before, tracking back to his time with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then he was dropped around, went to the Patriots for a week, caught a touchdown against the Dolphins. It's been a weird 4 years for Antonio Brown, but man, has he come back and looked strong. The deep passing game is there. The route running is still there. He's still got that swagger, that mojo, that juice when he gets in the end zone. He is still the classic Antonio Brown. He might just be a little bit more sane than he was the last time we saw him on the field. So, love to see this for AB. Awesome player, was an awesome value draft pick in leagues this year. And then behind him by the slimmest of margins, because again, I'm not trying to overreact to this too much, but Chris Godwin is right on the cusp. I mean, you could really go one way or another with these players. I will say I feel the safest with Chris Godwin's floor of the two, but I think Antonio definitely has the better ceiling right now because he's the one stretching the field and scoring long ball touchdowns. Godwin's a big slot guy, so he's going to line up and he's going to score TDs, but he's usually doing that within 20 yards. Since Jameis left this offense, he's doing a lot less field stretching and catching passes deep downfield and making explosive plays. He's been a little bit more of, I don't want to call him a check down player because that's not doing service to his talent or really speaking to his capabilities as a player, but he's much more of the intermediate passing game player in this offense of the big three wide receivers in Tampa. So still feeling good about Chris Godwin. He's still a weekly lineup start. But I think the ceiling is a little bit lower than it is for an Antonio Brown, and that's why I've got him, again, by the slimmest of margins behind here. Adam Thielen. So when I prepped this video, I didn't plan on having Adam Thielen in my top 24 because I've got this grudge against the touchdown dependency of Adam Thielen over the last 2-3 seasons. But the dude is just a touchdown magician. I mean, for as unreliable as touchdown scoring and productivity is for wide receivers or any position to project year over year, this guy does it at a Davante Adams level clip. Now, okay, that might be a bit of a stretch and exaggeration, but those might be the two most dependable players on a yearly basis to come out and score double-digit touchdowns. Adam Thielen just has a knack, a feel, a way about his game that he always figures out how to find space and separate down there, and Kirk trusts him and gives him time and time again opportunity after opportunity to get 2 feet in bounds and score 6 and put the 2 posts up. The dude doesn't slow down. He scores touchdowns like nobody's business, and he's still a dang good receiver. Don't get me wrong. Justin Jefferson is the one in this offense in today's game, and obviously he's transitioning into that alpha role for the Vikings. But Adam Thielen has still got a place in fantasy lineups. You almost can't sit him because the odds of him scoring a touchdown are almost better than they are that he won't score one. So Thielen proves me wrong yet again. He's had a couple ugly games so far where he doesn't score a touchdown. His yardage total isn't all that awesome. But again, I mean, he's coming out here, and even if it is 4 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown, he's getting the job done. So you got to at least give him props for that. He's not my favorite player, not the most dependable floor start in the world, but he's got a ceiling to him, and he's got that touchdown element, which is a very real factor in his outlook for the past, few seasons, or at least since his breakout with Minnesota. He's been very impressive in that department. Marquise Hollywood Brown, Butterfingers Brown, lots of nicknames for Mr. Brown here on the SFS channel. The dude's got to help himself out. He lets more fantasy points slip through his fingertips than anybody else in the league. Dude cannot seem to catch a clutch pass. I mean, he is an awesome player, super explosive, dynamic, finds space, separation, gets open downfield. Lamar Jackson's progression as a player and a passer has really opened up this passing game for the Ravens offense. But man, he dropped another touchdown last week. He dropped 2 against the Lions earlier on in the season. I don't want the Butterfingers Brown to be a staple here on the channel, but it finds a way to do it. He just continuously finds ways to lose us fantasy points. He would have had an okay outing last week had he not dropped that pass, but the fact that he did makes us in the situation where we're at. I want to have Marquise higher on this list because his ceiling so far this year has shown us that the productivity is there. But I've got my concerns, my reservations with Rashad Bateman returning to the lineup. He's a dang good route runner, super savvy player. I think the world of Bateman's talent and capabilities here. So I think naturally that eats into both Hollywood and Mark Andrews' target share and volume in this passing offense, because Rashad Bateman returning to the lineup doesn't mean that the Ravens are going to throw 6 to 10 more passes per game. It means that you're going to be looking for, maybe it's not going to be all the way up to 10 right away, but in his first career start, he did have 6 targets and tied Mark Andrews for the team lead. Maybe, though, you're talking about collectively in that offense, 4, 6, 8 targets being pulled from other players and pushed in that direction. So it's a very real possibility that Hollywood sees his average targets the rest of this season. That'll be something interesting for me when projecting these 2 players for next year, when they'll be cohesively existing in this offense. What was Hollywood's average targets per game before Rashad Bateman came in? And the rest of the way here this season, while Rashad Bateman's healthy and developing, progressing, and stepping up in this offense, what do Brown's numbers look like after that? So that's the reasoning for him being lower on the list here today. Number 23, certainly more talented. He could rise up further if he proves me wrong and shows that that doesn't really matter for his fantasy outlook. But at face value, that seems like something that's a very real concern. And then Robert Woods, the eternal give and take. What is it going to be? We still don't really know what he is in fantasy right now. We know he's got the talent to produce. We've seen him 3 times this year put up really nice numbers. But we've also seen him kind of hit the deck and not be the consistent weekly lineup option that he's been the entire rest of his career in the blue and yellow. Royal and yellow, royal and gold. I don't know what the official color is. Blue and something. Blue, yellow, gold, whatever the case might be. Who cares? Not the point. Robert Woods is one of the better route runners, one of the more underrated route runners, I should say, because better route runners are clearly the guys at the top of this list. And despite the fact that he's got the quarterback situation, check, that box has been fulfilled by Matthew Stafford. Cooper Kupp has taken over and begun to dominate this offense. And while Robert Woods, like I said, we saw it against Seattle, can come out here and put together a dang impressive performance, how often are we going to be getting those numbers from him? There's been a little bit of a level of unreliability and question marks surrounding his week-to-week productivity that I think still need to be answered before we can truly say what his week-to-week lineup potential is. I still believe he's more of a floor play than a ceiling play. And that floor is not as strong as it once was even just a season ago. But the ceiling certainly, I feel comfortable saying, is there, but is far less likely to be the case for you. So I think this number 24 spot really well puts together my current assessment of Robert Woods. He is a low-end wide receiver 2 for now. The upside to be a week winner isn't going to be a frequent occurrence in your lineups. But what you can hope for is, even in a game when he doesn't score or doesn't produce as much yardage output as you would like, hopefully you can find the end zone because his offense is productive enough to sustain drives and to get them down in scoring territory many, many times a game. So Bobby Trees, I'm still trusting him. He's still a must-start player almost every week for me, especially at the wide receiver 2 or flex positions. But we're a little bit lower than we were on him even 6-7 months ago in the pre-draft and post-2020 season process. All right, those were my top 24 wide receivers here in Week 7 fantasy football. Remember, if you want to go check out my most recent running backs rest of season rankings episode, those are going to be from Week 6. So there's been a week gap in between here. We'll be posting that video again with its updated form in Week 8, and then the receivers episode next will come out in Week 9. So go check those videos out if you'd like to, and remember to stay here on the channel. Click that subscribe button, turn the bell on so you're never late for an episode or miss a piece of content for me. Also, go check out my game picks, which I've posted today as well. For Week 7 action, I've got 5 picks against the spread that I've made for this week, in addition to my straight game winners for every NFL matchup this week, whether it's Thursday, Sunday games, Monday. I'll do all those picks, and then I will also be diving into my Thrive Fantasy lineup for Week 7 here on Thursday Night Football between the Browns and the Denver Broncos. So be sure to check that out. Sign up for Thrive Fantasy. Using promo code SIZZLE, you'll get an instant deposit match bonus of up to $100 when you sign up. We're trying to grow that brand and that community, and Thrive is an awesome platform to play daily fantasy sports on. So I'd love to have you guys check it out and play with me every single week. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to this point in the video, you're a legend. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.